So I set a few questions on altitudes of triangles in the previous video. What I'm going to do here is work these through, show you how to do them, and get you a set of answers for them. Just a refresher, these were the questions I asked. So calculate the altitude from A to E of the triangle below. I've given you all the coordinates there. And if P was 4, 7, R is negative 3, 0, and S is 5, negative 2, they're the vertices of a triangle. What's the equation of the altitude from P? So let's have a ping at these. So the first one, calculate the altitude from A to E of this triangle here. Now remember, the altitude is the equation of this line here. Altitude is perpendicular to the line it intersects with. So in order to get the equation, we need a gradient and we need a point. We have the point we're using is A. We need the gradient. For this, we can use the property m1 times m2 equals negative 1. If we know the gradient from B to C, we can use this to get the gradient of A to E, and then we've got all the information we need. And we've got enough information to get that gradient from B to C, so let's do it. So the gradient from B to C is negative 2 take away negative 5 over 7 take away negative 2. So negative 2 take away negative 5 is negative 2 plus 5, which gives me 3. 7 take away negative 2 is 9, so it's 3 over 9, which we can simplify down to 1/3. So what I'm then able to say is 1/3 times the second gradient equals negative 1, where the second gradient here is the gradient from A to E. From that, I can then say, fine, so my gradient from A to E is equal to negative 3. So I now have a gradient, I now have a point, I can use my equation of a straight line, the y minus b equals mx minus a, to get the equation of my altitude. So I could say, fine, so y minus 12 equals negative 3 bracket x plus 1. Remember, minus minus, because a minus 1 gives me a plus. So I've got all this information here, I can now multiply it out. So y minus 12 equals negative 3x minus 3. And again, remember, two ways we could write it. I could have it as y equals negative 3x plus 9, or I could have it as y plus 3x minus 9 equals 0. Again, if there's no specific version asked for, either would be fine. Maybe even look, if there's a part B and you're going to be using it to get intersections of lines, one of these could be more beneficial to use than the other. So plan ahead with it when you've got that. Okay. Next question. If P, R and S are those coordinates and they're vertices of a triangle, what is the equation of the altitude from P? One like this where you're given the points and just an explanation and a spiel, it could be more beneficial to do a rough sketch. So roughly that's what a triangle looks like. There's the point P, there's the point R, and there's the point S. So something along those lines is what it could look like. Now, we want the altitude from P. So if we fill in all the sides, we know that the thing we're looking for is the altitude from P. So this line here. Let's imagine that intersects at a point there. Let's call that big X. Again, what we need is the gradient of RS, because we know the gradient of RS times the gradient of this is negative 1 because they're perpendicular. We also need a coordinate, but we know the coordinate of P. So we've got information there, we just need to build on it and then use it. So our gradient from R to S is equal to 0 take away negative 2 over negative 3 take away 5. So 0 minus minus 2 gives me 2, negative 3 take away 5 gives me negative 8, so my gradient's negative 1/4. We then know that negative 1/4 times m2 equals negative 1. This m2 is the gradient of our xp, our altitude. Solving that, we get the gradient of our altitude equal to 4. So now we've got enough information to just substitute the bits in. Remember, it's the point P we want to use, so this is the coordinate we use for the AB. So it's y minus 7 equals 4 bracket x minus 4, and then it's just solving and multiplying out. Y minus 7 equals 4x minus 16, and again, you've got your two versions of writing it. You could write y equals 4x, you've then got minus 16 plus 7, so it's minus 9, or you can have y minus 4x plus 9 equals 0. Again, either of the two versions is perfectly fine. There's no specific version asked for in the question. Hope those questions went well and you followed the general idea behind them all. See you in class for a bit more work.